It is Friday the 19th of April. Welcome to Friday Night with me, Niall Paterson. This is the show where we take all the news, the good bits and the bad, and dissect them for your entertainment. Tonight, we will be speaking to our panel here in the studio, reviewing the week and looking ahead to the weekend. But first, the headlines this hour. Israel strikes back against Iran 5 days after Tehran launched its massive missile and drone attack. Much of the rest of the world, including G7 foreign ministers, now calling for calm.
We're committed to Israel's security. We're also committed to de-escalating, to trying to bring this tension to a close.
Breaking news, emergency services have taken away a man who set himself on fire outside the New York courthouse where jury selection was taking place in Donald Trump's hush money trial. Nicola Sturgeon speaks out for the first time since her husband Peter Murrell was charged with embezzlement.
It's incredibly difficult, but that's not the main issue here. So I can't say any more. I'm not going to say any more.
And millions in India cast their votes in the world's biggest election. Coming up, I'll be joined by our news reviewers, Ed Patrick and Katie Puckrik. Both of them here with us until 9 o'clock, giving us their take on the week's news and the stories that are continuing to gain momentum as we head into the weekend. So what we'll be discussing? Well, certainly those fresh hopes that the US Congress could finally sign off more than $60 billion to this man. Ukrainian military aid could be coming as soon as tomorrow. We'll also have the very latest on the sleaze allegations about the, now former Tory MP, Mark Menzies. Could it result in yet another unwanted by-election? Plus, on the day her new album is released, we'll be discussing the swift hike in hotel rates and the scams ruining for fans hoping to see Taylor here this summer. And in the sport, why a row over FA Cup replays is threatening to spoil this weekend's semi-finals. Great to have your company. We're here for the next 2 hours. Hold on tight. It's Friday night. Evening all. We were, of course, waiting for an Israeli response to last weekend's extensive, if mostly ineffective, aerial attack from Iran. Well, in the early hours of this morning, it appears that response arrived. The government and military in Israel are declining to confirm or deny that they even carried out a strike. And with the Iranians downplaying the incident, it's hard to know exactly what damage was caused. Iranian state media say air defense systems were fired in several provinces with reports of explosions. But so far, at least, no casualties or even damage has been confirmed. Our first report from our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle.
After 5 days considering its next move, Israel launched an attack on Iran in the early hours of Friday morning. The target was an airbase near the central city of Isfahan. By first light, the skies were calm again. This was filmed at the nearby Isfahan nuclear facility. Not itself a target, but by hitting close by, Israel had made a point. By breakfast time, Iranian state media was reporting that a few small drones had been shot down.
Nothing has happened. Everything is back to normal.
The sound heard early in the morning today in Isfahan was not an explosion. It was our powerful air defense firing at a suspicious object.
Social media in Iran mocked Israel's attack, another indication that the government was starting to play it down. Iran's president gave an address on television later in the morning and only had this to say on recent tensions with Israel.
Striking Israel was necessary, obligatory, unifying, and a source of pride and power for our great country.
There has been no official comment from the Israeli government, although the far-right National Security Minister Ben-Gvir put out this tweet describing the strikes as feeble. Israel's allies, who this week had been urging restraint, were noticeably coy today.
I'm not going to speak to that, except to say that the United States has not been involved in any offensive operations.
Calm heads should prevail. Any significant escalation in the region is not what anyone needs. It wouldn't be in anyone's interests.
There have been no reports of casualties from the Israeli attack, and Iran state TV hasn't shown any video of damage caused. Benjamin Netanyahu would have been given a menu of options for a response against Iran by the IDF. on the more provocative end of the scale would have been a strike against Iran's nuclear facilities. Lower down, an attack on pro-Iranian militia in Syria, for example. In one ear, he would have had the extreme right-wing elements of his coalition demanding that Israel take out a strong response. In the other ear, the US president and other Western allies telling him to take the win and walk away. In the end, he sided with neither and chose something in the middle, a limited response, which Iran appears to be brushing off. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Jerusalem.
And we will be returning to the Middle East in just a second, but we've got some breaking news tonight. A man is reported to have set himself on fire outside the court building where jurors are being selected for Donald Trump's fraud trial. Our US correspondent James Matthews joins us. James, what more do we know at the moment?
Hi, Neil. Yeah, very distressing and disturbing scene outside the court building. It occurred just after the jury had been seated, 12 plus 6 alternates, and Donald Trump was rising to leave the courtroom, although there had still been scheduled business for the rest of the day. At that point, outside the court building, in a park area that has been set aside for demonstrators, pro and anti-Trump, in that area, what's described as a young man was seen to douse himself in fluid and light that fluid, setting himself on fire. Not before he had thrown coloured pamphlets in the air. The place is teeming with NYPD officers and other security. They rushed to the scene and with the aid of a fire extinguisher managed to douse the flames. The individual concerned has since been put in an ambulance and taken to hospital. We're told the fire is out, but by all accounts, a very distressing scene for those who were in the vicinity. It is a busy place and subject to very tight security, given the kind of personnel that is in that court building that comes and goes every day. As I say, that area is set aside for protesters. It was very busy earlier in the week when Donald Trump made his first appearance at the courthouse. It is certainly well policed. There is one section for pro-Trump protesters, one section for anti-Trump protesters, and the two are separated by barricades. So that's what the area is set aside for. It's across the road from the main front entrance to the court building, and that's where it took place. It cannot have helped a situation where there is a degree of people being on edge, people on edge in the jury box. We've seen that over the course of the week as those 18 members have been selected, some with their personal details made public, and as a result of that, they have been unnerved by the whole procedure. So much focus on this court case, much anticipation clearly, but much reluctance and a degree certainly of trepidation approaching the big day on Monday when the opening statements are read. This will not have helped the mood around that court building in downtown Manhattan.
James, for now, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's take you to the White House, where we're told there is a briefing taking place about the situation between Israel and Iran. Let's take a listen.
Oil production, domestic oil production is down slightly from its recent peak, and now we have the situation in the Middle East. How concerned is the administration about the combination of all of those things?
So we're going to continue to watch the markets very carefully. As you know, this is an administration, the Biden-Harris administration is committed to maintaining a stable and secure energy supply and lowering prices for Americans. As you saw the president, as you all know, when Russia invaded Ukraine and gas prices started to go up, inflation obviously was infected by that. The president took action and tapped into the SPR. So obviously we are focused on securing energy supply and, like I said, lowering prices for Americans. The United States' current record domestic oil and gas production is helping meet our immediate needs while we make the historic investment needed to transition into clean energy economy. But obviously, we're going to continue to watch the markets carefully.
This level of silence from you guys about what's happening in the Middle East, is really new. And I heard what you had to say, but can you explain why? Because the official line that we're not going to talk about this, that is the line, that is the choice. Mm-hmm. Is it part of your strategy to de-escalate?
Look, I'm going to, again, be super mindful, and I get the interest, obviously. I understand the interest, and going to be disappointing many people here this afternoon. I just don't have anything to share. I'm not going to speculate on the reportings out there. You heard the same. Obviously, you said what we've been saying since this morning. You heard from Secretary Blinken, and so I'm just going to be really, really mindful. But as you asked me as well about escalation, I'm going to speak more generally. We have been very, very clear from here, from the beginning, that we do not want to see this conflict escalate. We continue to consult with our allies and partners, including in the region, obviously, and to reduce further risk of escalation in the region. And that's a sentiment that was expressed in the G7 foreign ministries joint statement that went out this morning. You heard that, obviously, from Secretary Blinken, who was part of that meeting. I'm just going to be super mindful. I'm not going to speculate or speak to any of the reportings that are out there at this time.
Okay, and earlier this month...
That's White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, sticking pretty much to the line that we heard from US Secretary of State Antony Blinken at that G7 foreign ministers meeting a little earlier on today, saying pretty much nothing other than we were not involved in the military action, and refusing to be drawn much further. Speculation, of course, swirling around Israel's strike on Iran, but for the time being, and one wonders how long it will last, the White House staying stum. But let's stick with politics of a Scottish variety now, and the former SNP leader and First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, has given her reaction after her husband was charged by the police with embezzlement of funds. Peter Murrell, the former chief executive of the Scottish National Party, was charged last night by officers investigating party finances, as Sky's Conor Gillies reports.
Ms Sturgeon, just your reaction to the news?
Look, this is a difficult time.
Seen for the first time after the most dramatic moment in this country's highest profile police probe. How difficult is this for you personally?
It's incredibly difficult, but that's not the main issue here. So I can't say any more. I'm not going to say any more.
Her husband Peter Murrell charged with embezzlement of SNP funds, a party the pair dominated for decades. He was the CEO of the SNP for almost 20 years, but it all changed last year for the couple, who were both arrested and questioned by detectives. She was released without charge pending further inquiries in an investigation focused on £600,000 raised for a second Scottish independence referendum.
Really serious.
A headache for Humza Yousaf, who says Peter Murrell is no longer part of his party.
Well, these are serious developments. And as per the police statement, we now know that an individual has been charged, Peter has been charged, where the allegation of embezzlement from party funds, and that's a really serious matter indeed. Many people in the SNP, right across Scottish politics, will be shocked by the news.
This is an investigation involving some of the most senior specialist detectives in the whole of the UK, and they have been clear that the case into the SNP's funding and finances very much continues. But lawyers north of the border have also said that if there is to be a criminal trial involving Peter Murrell, then it could still be a long way off.
The police have charged Peter Murrell, so they believe they've got enough evidence to charge him with the crime of embezzlement. They will be preparing a report which they'll send to the prosecutors, who will then decide the next stage in the time frame. That will result in a court hearing where the charges are presented and Peter Murrell will have to make a plea of guilty or not guilty.
Nicola Sturgeon is now pleading for privacy in a story that has a long way to go. Conor Gillies, Sky News in Glasgow.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister appears to be on something of a moral mission to end so-called sick note culture. He's pledged to remove benefits for those who are fit to work, but don't accept job offers after a 12-month period. Rishi Sunak said unemployment support should be a safety net and never a choice. But his announcement triggered an outcry from disability charities and mental health campaigners. Our political correspondent Tamara Cohen has the story.
Let me get it.
Carol, who lives with her assistant's dog, has mental and physical health conditions which affect her daily life.
I have times when I can't get out of bed, and I have times when, to anybody on the street, I'd look perfectly well.
Good girl. She's able to work from home, but relies on personal independence payments and says the assessments are already rigorous.
It's so traumatic and so stressful, and the constant reassessment just exacerbates people's symptoms, especially if they've got mental health problems. You know, if you're depressed or anxious and you're living on edge like that all the time, it's awful.
Rishi Sunak says these benefits need reform and suggested some people with mental health conditions could receive treatment instead of payments.
We need to be more ambitious about helping people back to work, and more honest about the risk of over-medicalising the everyday challenges and worries of life.
He said mental illness is real and serious, but the bill is rising.
We now spend £69 billion on benefits for people of working age with a disability or health condition. That's more than our entire schools budget, more than our transport budget.
2.8 million working age people are not in a job due to long-term sickness. That compares with 2 million in 2019. He's also concerned about sick notes, with 11 million issued by GPs last year. Knowsley in Liverpool has the highest rate of what's called economic inactivity. People not in a job or seeking one, including because of illness. People here were concerned about the proposed changes.
There's no compassion whatsoever in that statement.
If you haven't been through it, then you don't understand it. If you haven't been through the depression where you physically can't get yourself out of bed in the morning.
People want to work, people don't want to sit on the backside.
Charities say these reforms would have a significant impact.
This feels like a full-on assault on disabled people, and it feels like we're trying to split out mental health from physical disability, and it's really worrying, and I think probably deeply distressing for lots of people to hear our Prime Minister say that their condition isn't as serious as they think it is, and doesn't deserve the support that they've been getting in the past.
Hi. Good morning, Mr. Prime Minister.
After the speech, meeting workers, the Prime Minister says his welfare plans are a moral mission. The finer details will have to wait until after the election. Tamara Cohen, Sky News.
The world's largest election has just got underway. Almost 1 billion people in India will be voting over the next 44 days to elect a new government. They're choosing representatives for 540 seats in the Lok Sabha, or Parliament, with voting taking place in 7 phases over the next 6 weeks to allow security and voting equipment to travel the country. The final results due to be announced on the 4th of June. This huge operation involves 15 million polling officials and security overseeing more than 1 million polling stations, which open in turn with electronic voting machines. Sky's Neville Lazarus reports now from Jaipur, one of the 102 constituencies which kicked off voting today.
In the old town of Jaipur in Rajasthan, voters line up before it gets too hot in the day. The summer heat can deter many. A process of multiple checks. The indelible ink is applied, signifying the person has voted. In a makeshift chamber, they will cast their ballot on electronic machines. More than 1 million of these machines will be accessed only on the 4th of June when the results are counted. More than half of the country's population is under the age of 25. 19-year-old Gauranshi Sharma is a first-time voter and has a certificate to go with it.
I feel very enthusiastic and I'm feeling really excited. To be honest, it's my first vote, so it feels like I'm stepping into adulthood.
A public holiday has been declared so that everyone can vote.
Hamare Ram aa gaye.
For a decade, Prime Minister Modi has dominated the political space. With a mix of religious identity and nationalism, he has crafted an image of a leader of the majority Hindu nation. But India has the world's 3rd largest Muslim population, over 200 million people. and the community has turned up in large numbers. Abdul says earlier we used to live together. Today we are all apart. Now elections are based on religion, and this is wrong.
I will give my vote to those who will help us, support us. I want them to come to power.
But polls say the majority feel differently.
Under Modi's rule, our country has risen very high. He should be re-elected. In fact, till the time he lives, he should be Prime Minister and take our country to greater heights.
Modi has promised a bright economic future for all, but many in the Muslim community haven't yet been convinced. Neville Lazarus, Sky News in Jaipur, Rajasthan.
Now, despite confirming her new music's release date at the Grammys, Taylor Swift has proven she can still shock fans. In the early hours, she announced it was a double album with around twice the number of tracks as expected. Our correspondent Emma Birchley reports.
It was an unexpected early hours update that sent Swifties into a spin.
I touched you, and for a fortnight there we were.
News that the 11th studio album from global megastar Taylor Swift would come with 15 extra tracks. It followed the release of a short video teasing what was to come. Then at 7 a.m. UK time came this on social media. It's a 2 a.m. surprise. The Tortured Poets department is a secret double album. The result said the star of wanting to share the tortured poetry she'd written over the past 2 years. This period of the author's life is now over, she wrote in another post. The chapter closed and boarded up. There is nothing to avenge, no scores to settle once wounds have healed. It's a breakup album that's got fans speculating about exactly who she's singing about.
I wish I could unrecall how we almost had it all.
Two British exes are certainly contenders, actor Joe Alwyn, as well as Matty Healy, singer from the 1975. But there's also a song thought to refer to her current love, American footballer Travis Kelce. Jodie Ward works at Banquet Records in Kingston and bought her copy as soon as she got in.
Your flatmates are all fans as well?
Oh, big fans, yeah. And they're very excited to get their hands on this as well as me.
Do you think you'll all have your own version?
Yeah,
your own
definitely.
One?
Yeah, we even though we normally use the one record player in our house, we all have our own just because it's, I don't know, you just want one for yourself.
And Trisha Brady was in to collect pre-ordered vinyl and CD versions.
I'm for my 22-year-old daughter, who's an absolute fan of Taylor Swift for every million reasons every other girl her age is. Her words, how she touches your heart.
John Tolley took delivery of 250 copies first thing.
We're selling more and more records, and vinyl is at a 25-year high, and whilst there's hundreds and thousands of artists putting out records on vinyl, no one is selling as many records as Taylor Swift.
The vinyl version doesn't include the full list of bonus tracks, but it'll still set you back £42.
But the billionaire isn't just bolstering her own bank balance. The 6-day Los Angeles leg of her Eras tour is said to have boosted the local economy by the equivalent of £250 million.
It's going to be called the Eras Tour. See you there.
Her current show has sold out stadiums across the world and is projected to become the highest-grossing tour in history. This latest album is just more fuel for fans' adulation, while keeping them guessing. Emma Birchley, Sky News.
Time to introduce our panel tonight. With us for the next 2 hours, we're joined by the comedian and NHS anaesthetist Ed Patrick and the writer and broadcaster Katie Puckrik. Lovely to see you both. Either of you guys, Swifties, I will admit right now that it was only about a year ago that I learnt that a Swiftie was not just the pint of lager that I inhale immediately after stepping off air. You a fan?
I am a fan of her power and authority and her grip on the pocketbook of every young woman and a lot of young men.
Oh, huge. I mean, she's absolutely massive. And also, I mean, we'll talk more about this later on in the show, Ed, but even if you're not her biggest fan, you've got to admire the longevity of her career, the way in which she has remained current, and the mountain of cash that she is sitting on.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, I think it's the 11th album. And also, this double album has come out on the back of doing a tour after a heartbreak, a relatively brief heartbreak as well. I mean, what an amazing sort of thing to be able to just churn out.
Come on, Ed, it's all material as far as Taylor's concerned.
Yeah.
So, you know, bring on the bad times, because that's going to go ka-ching.
You've got it, but you have to ask yourself. I mean, again, I've been acquainting myself with the double album out today. She does seem to be settling quite a few scores. I mean, I know that she and very famous NFL footballer whose name escapes me at the moment, Travis Kelce, I think.
Travis Kelce, that's it.
I know that she's loved up at the moment, but you know, if you're a man entering a relationship with her, you'd have to think twice about it.
Let the buyer beware.
Yeah.
We all know that Taylor Swift isn't someone to shake it off, so...
Guys, we will move on. We've got plenty more coming up after the break, including, well, will Ukraine finally get its lethal aid package from the United States? We're taking a look ahead to a very key vote in Washington. And also the League of Sleaze. Just how many MPs have had the whip suspended during this Parliament? And for much more in-depth analysis on the situation in the Middle East, we have a special programme immediately following us tonight. Yalda Hakim will be there with The World on Sky News from 9 o'clock.
Well, obviously, first of all, I'd like to address that the government just made an announcement, and this announcement is eliminating golden visa for those who want to purchase a property for 500,000 euros or more. But the golden visa remains active till now, because there should be a parliament process for the amendment that they're going to do to the act. There may be changes or they may be not. So for now, it's still active. We don't know. This is creating a lot of disinformation, because we don't know what's going to happen to the current holders of golden visas, which is actually a residency permit. We are not aware what's going to happen when the residency permit expires and they're about to do a renewal. And there is also uncertainty for those who are currently processing their golden visa. Well, in my professional opinion, they should continue, okay? Because until we don't learn anything more about this amendment to the law, as I said, is still active. And we are currently processing golden visa. And the golden visa department that's located in Madrid, which is called Unidad de Grandes Empresas, is still processing them, okay? And that will be my advice to continue. Let's say that in a few days, we learn that those that are currently holders or they are processing it, those will be processed, but once they expire. In the meantime, if you're currently a holder of a golden visa, this residency permit, you can actually swap it, okay, to another residency permit while you are here in Spain.
Welcome back to Friday Night. With us this evening, our news reviewers, Ed Patrick and Katie Puckrik. Guys, lovely to have you with us this evening. What is our first topic? Well, we're going to start with something we're actually expecting tomorrow. The House of Representatives in the United States set to vote on a massive multi-billion-dollar foreign aid bill, which includes almost $61 billion for weapons and other lethal assistance to support Ukraine for as long as 2 years. There has been opposition from the right wing of the Republican Party, which has pretty much stalled the legislation for months. The Speaker, Mike Johnson, refusing repeatedly to put the bill to a vote. Now, ramping up the political stakes, the vote will also include more than $20 billion in military support for Israel. Let's take a quick look.
President Zelensky, are you confident you can persuade Congress to give you the aid?
What the Biden administration seems to be asking for is billions of additional dollars with no appropriate oversight, no clear strategy to win.
Not to support Ukraine is close to criminal neglect.
If we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay.
The former president has sent a dangerous and shockingly, frankly, un-American signal to the world.
It is urgent that the United States make a decision.
Russian forces raise their flag over another piece of stolen land.
David Cameron says that you should vote through funding for Ukraine. What do you say to that?
I think he tried to compare us to Hitler. Frankly, he can kiss my ass.
I'm not going to respond anatomically, but this is so important.
When the free world hesitates, that's when dictatorships celebrate.
This money and everything it'll provide is urgently needed by Ukraine. Most important thing is getting this aid voted and moving it forward.
Well, I think we know where Marjorie Taylor Greene stands on everything. She, of course, the individual that told my colleague James Matthews that David Cameron could kick her backside. But let's talk about this vote, because it does look, Katie, as if this is now going to get through. But in the gap between this aid first being proposed and finally making its way to Ukraine, how much land has been lost? How many lives have been lost, frankly?
Yeah, this is the thing that the representatives in the House have lost sight of, because they're only interested in burnishing their own metrics on social media. Washington, it used to be said that it was Hollywood for ugly people, and it really has become worse than that. It's sort of like high school for morons. All these people are just trying to bump their likes and amongst their base, and Marjorie Taylor Greene is a great example of that. She's buying into Putin's talking points. There's not a sense of anything that they're going to gain beyond immediate popularity amongst a very small group of their own supporters. They're not looking at the bigger picture. They're not looking at the fact that all of Europe stands to be weakened if Ukraine falls to Russia.
I mean, Ed, I suppose that the other point to be made is, you know, a lot of our attention has been focused of late on what has been happening, not in the eastern frontier of Europe, but on the Middle East. Understandably so, you know, in excess of 30,000 people dead in the Gaza Strip. You know, it would be enough to focus anyone's mind on the situation. But whilst everyone has been talking about Israel and Hezbollah and Lebanon and, you know, Iran and all the rest of it, the war continues in Ukraine, and the Russians are making ground.
And what also we don't really hear about in these, you know, conversations outside is what's actually happening to the people on the ground in Ukraine as well, the people that are really suffering. Like you said, it's been going on for months now, these discussions, and it really is about, you know, what kind of message does it send if you step out and, you know, let Ukraine just fall like that? It does make the rest of Europe weaker, but also what's that message does that send out to the rest of the countries that might be attacked? You know, how much support can they expect? Is it always going to be a sort of time amount they're going to get rather than a full backing?
And Katie, I suppose when you look, and we saw some of it, some of his rhetoric in that little montage there, when you look at the rhetoric being deployed by Donald Trump and you look at the polling that is taking place right now, if you're in Ukraine, if you're anywhere in the eastern frontier of Europe, and, you know, if you're in much of the United States, actually, I would say, there are probably some people that are pretty concerned.
Well, I think the polling shows that people largely do supporting Ukraine. Trump likes to be provocative. He likes to take this sort of bogus tough guy stance and makes him look hard. He likes to align himself with strong men and authoritarian leaders.
I can't remember the precise phraseology, but he was talking in very glowing terms about the leader of North Korea back when he was in office.
Right, who sent him, as he called it, a love letter. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's just one of those things that I think makes him feel good in the moment, and then provides this sort of mask of false bravado that appeals to a certain sector. But I think, by and large, even other Republican lawmakers are for, including Speaker Johnson.
Of course. He's done exceptional work to actually get this, to the point of a vote and possibly even through.
I mean, he always did support Ukraine, and then became the speaker, and then he was wavering, he was a bit flip-floppy, and now he's back on it. But that's a whole mess. That's a kind of like 70s-style Italian government mess going on in Washington right now.
I mean, Ed, of course, David Cameron, as we used to know him, made the trip all the way to Mar-a-Lago, had a quick word with Donald Trump. That must have sorted it all out.
Well, I mean, David Cameron, he's known to sort things out one way or the other. Not always the way everyone else wants it to be sorted out. So I'm not sure that's going to really solve everything. Again, I think, that's unfortunately the British version of bravado is David Cameron going over there. I don't know really if he's going to make much of a difference or if this is just fodder for his next book in a cabin.
I think you may have a point. Guys, let's pause there just for a second. When we come back after the break, we're going to be talking about Rishi Sunak and his call for an end to what he sees as sick note culture, getting people back into work. We'll be discussing that after this. Welcome back. Now, what is there left to say about politicians and sleaze that hasn't already been said? Well, quite a lot, it seems. This week saw the, frankly, jaw-dropping story surrounding the Conservative MP Mark Menzies. The Times newspaper reported that he's alleged to have used thousands of pounds of campaign funds to pay off so-called bad people who locked him in a flat. Now, he is disputing what's been written, but in the interim, he has had the whip suspended pending an inquiry. Labour certainly put pressure on the government, and ministers tried not to answer some pretty awkward questions.
There's a process in place. He has had the whip withdrawn. Some further information that the Chief Whip, I understand, became familiar with yesterday, and action's been swiftly taken on the basis of that further information. I think it is important to stress that the MP in question here denies the allegations.
There are obviously a lot of unanswered questions in relation to these allegations, not least why it seems the Conservative Party took so long to act, and whether they've reported this to the police, who it seems to me should be involved in this.
Katie, Ed, do you know, sometimes I think I'm losing my grip on reality. The number of stories that we have had about Conservative MPs, and this one, where he was apparently at 3 o'clock in the morning on the phone to his 78-year-old campaign director begging for money. But I suppose, and we should say that Mr Menzies denies all the allegations, yes. I suppose perhaps the bigger problem here is why did the Conservative Party not do anything about it? They first heard about this, Ed, back in January.
It is amazing. I think we're getting to the point now where it's happened to so many Conservative MPs that there's a whole Guess Who board game to be made out of it.
100%.
And it seems to be every week there seems to be a new scandal. William Ragg last week. I mean, I don't know who's opening picture messages from someone called Willie Ragg, but it wouldn't be me. I'm just absolutely amazed that this happens. And also the story, the top line of the story... of giving money to bad people, surely you go to someone else before giving the money. You know, there's got to be layers to this story that we don't know about.
I suspect so. But as we were talking about in the break, Katie, look, you know, the number of stories that have come out that, frankly, have had me banging my head off my keyboard, you know, and laughing at times, you know, tractor porn and, you know, being daft and drinking far too much and knickers up a flagpole stuff. But actually, when you look at the number of people that have had the whip removed from them and the things that they've had it removed from accusations of indecent exposure, you know, molesting female staff, you know, all the way to the sexual assault of a 15-year-old boy. I mean, there is something rotten at the heart of a political party that sees stories like this cropping up time and time and time again.
You know, Neil, I think that this is almost a feature, not a bug, of people who go into politics. You'd hope that people would be civically minded and, you know, want to make the world a better place. But maybe it's just a case of having a rampant ego and a giant id and not very much self-control. And that's what makes you want to recklessly choose to be a politician. And so all of this other very colourful behaviour goes along with it.
Yeah, but I knew that MPs were held to a different standard to the rest of us, but I always assumed it was a higher standard, Ed. But you look and you compare and contrast the situation with Mark Menzies, now suspended from the party, and that of Angela Rayner. Stuff that happened long before she became a parliamentarian, stuff that happened to him, that, you know, happened in December last year. We understand that Lancashire Police are now looking at the situation. There isn't an investigation just yet. But what do you think of the way in which the Conservative benches have gone after her over, you know, what to some people is a question about probity, is a question about her character and her moral compass and all the rest of it. But when sat next to this stuff, well, that's silly.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's almost like they need to sort out their own lot before they can go off to someone else like this. I agree that it needs to be looked into, but when there's every week there seems to be a story about the Conservative Party, whether it's, you know, tax evasion or whether it's some scandal of sex scandal,
lobbying, you know, you can take your pick.
Exactly, yeah, like you said, it's a tombola of what you can pick out would happen with them. They're obviously using it as a political attack, but when they've got so much going on in their own backyard.
Well, apparently there's 12 different police officers looking into Rayner's tax affairs. I mean, that's quite a big investigation for something that happened, 9 years ago?
Well, let's wait and see what the outcome of that particular investigation will be. But we're going to move on to a different topic, still with the Prime Minister. He tried to put allegations of sleaze and falling poll ratings behind him today with a new initiative to shake up what he calls Britain's sick note culture. Mr Sunak says work is good for people, and he was worried that benefits have become a lifestyle choice. He set out plans to take people's benefits away if they're fit to work and they don't accept a job within 12 12 months. Ed, to you first, obviously, with your kind of that medical hat on just for a second, taking away the opportunity for GPs to sign people off work and instead handing it to what I'm told are specialist work and health professionals. I mean, I would have thought a doctor might have fallen into that category.
I think you're absolutely right. It's worrying, really, because he's talking about, you know, numbers going up and talking about trying to crack it. Actually, what's causing the problem here? You know, this is what's happened to the NHS. How much have you decimated it? Where's the support for people that need it? Maybe that's the cause of the problem, and we should be helping look after people, not trying to force them out. The statement he came out with was just had no compassion whatsoever for the people that might be suffering these things. And I don't think he, as a person, can actually understand as well. He comes from a very different background in terms of, you know, very privileged. You know, remember him talking about all the different breads he had. You know, this is not the same situation, and you cannot just tar everyone with the same kind of brush. It's very individual.
Why then, in your mind, are we seeing record numbers of people being signed off? As of February of this year, 2.8 million people are out of work, which is the highest it's ever been.
Well, I think the way it's been managed by the government, like I said, everything, the cost of living has been absolutely brutal for people. This has an impact on people's families, on their daily lives. Again, the impact of what that happens to people's mental health and whether that, you know, crosses thresholds to make people really unwell as too. It's very individual, mental health and things like depression and anxiety. You cannot just sweep it like that. And you're right, you need someone like a doctor, a medical professional, to be able to help look after that and not just have people who, you know, maybe look at things from a face value, because some of these things you can't see. Yeah. And you cannot just judge someone by that. Just,
Katie, on the topic of kind of mental health, actually, that was one of the things that leapt out to me here. We had just a few years ago, as you will well know, Ed, this promise from the Department for Health that we were going to see parity of esteem, equal treatment between physical well-being and mental well-being. Then we find out today that there will be a requirement of greater medical evidence about the type and severity of mental health conditions. This singling out of people suffering, you know, damage to their mental health, I'm somewhat uncomfortable with.
Yeah, it seems funny, like, and especially if they are asking for all of this proof that you're, you know, unwell in your head. It seems like you do need a doctor. You know, you need somebody who is able to not just affirm that you're very unwell, but direct you to a place where you can actually get treatment. So not just be signed off, but get treatment.
But again, and maybe this is me perhaps being the professional cynic here, but isn't it the case, Ed? You don't have to go too far in your circle of friends, or at least I don't, to find someone who did get themselves signed off work, you know, on a little bit of a con. I mean, it will happen. It does happen. I suppose the question is what these specialist work and health professionals can do that GPs cannot, and in what way they wouldn't be swayed in the way in which some doctors have been.
I mean, I think with every system you will have people that try to take advantage of it. You know, we could go back to sort of tax and the Conservatives, and then we're back in the same thing again.
Yeah, very good point. Ed, Katie, we are going to pause there. We will be back with you guys in the 8 o'clock hour. Go off. Chill out, relax just for a second. Not just yet, let me get us into the break. We are, however, as just mentioned, going to take one. Coming up in the sport, however, this is going to be fun. As the holders at Manchester City prepare for their FA Cup semi-final, the football community totally at odds over the scrapping of what? Find out next.
I'm Adam Parsons. I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. More flares going off, a volley of rocks, cobbles have been pulled up out and are being used as missiles to hurl at these police. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. We have now left Italy and entered France. Nobody's asked to check our identity. Made by people who dare to challenge. Nice to see you again, Mr. Barnier.
I'll be disappointed.
Why?
Not meeting you.
fishing does have the potential to stymie an enormous economic deal. What strikes you when you come to this glacier is not just the way in which the environment is changing, but the speed at which those changes are happening.
It's devastating, actually.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back to Friday night. In the sport, Emma Raducanu's winning week has come to an end after losing to the world number one, Iga Swiatek. I think I'm going to get corrected on that pronunciation in just a second, at the Stuttgart Open. Teddy over at Sky Sports News joins us this evening. Teddy, first and foremost, what is her proper name? And secondly, how was the week for Emma Raducanu?
It was a great week for Emma Raducanu. Iga Swiatek is the pronunciation I have, but to be fair, I'm not fluent in Polish, so that's my best bet from what we've said. But she's a three-time French Open champion, four-time Grand Slam champion. But Emma Raducanu and this resurgence this week, a couple of big wins, including one over Angelique Kerber, really pushed Swiatek, who is the world number one. She won 4 consecutive matches to reach the last 8 of the tournament. We saw her today, got a break early in the match against Swiatek, in fact, and pushed her to 7-6 in the tiebreak. Second set, Swiatek's class perhaps told, as I say, 3-time French Open winner. This was a 10th straight consecutive win for Swiatek on clay. So for Raducanu, a real learning match in this one. I was going to say fight for a second, but it was a one-on-one there. And Raducanu, who dropped to 303rd in the world rankings coming into this. You remember September 11th, 2021, Neil? It was a swashbuckling performance, wasn't it, to come through to win the US Open as an 18-year-old. She's still only 21, so you just wonder, after a really difficult 2023, 8 months out, wrist surgery, ankle surgery, could Emma Raducanu be back? And this should be, I think, will be a confidence boost to take Swiatek to that tiebreak in the first set, albeit to lose today.
Plenty more coming up in the sport. Teddy, take it away.
Absolutely.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
This is a glimpse into the future of AFC Bournemouth, a multi-million-pound training ground that is getting closer to transforming the club completely. Owner and American businessman Bill Foley was visiting from his home in Las Vegas, an opportunity to see his vision becoming reality.
It looks spectacular.
It looks spectacular, but maybe
that's the difference you've got.
Could we have saved a few £1 million?
Maybe. But yeah, it certainly looks incredible, that's for sure.
I mean, women's academy, first team, unbelievable facilities are going to be here. This will be one of the best training facilities in the league. When it's finished, it's going to be unbelievable. Despite being Bournemouth's owner for less than 18 months, he's been bullish with his predictions about survival and made huge strides off the pitch in an industry that promises fans so much but fails to deliver. So how has he kept his word? Transparency, be honest, always tell the truth, and always be honest. And I have big ambitions for this team, and I know we can do it because I've done it. I've done it with the Golden Knights, our hockey club.
So you've translated what you did in Vegas to Bournemouth with the same model, the same infrastructure, the same plans?
Same plan, same program. It's expensive. You've got to put a lot of money behind to keep your word, you've got to put a lot of money behind it. But the goal is, now that we've moved up the table a bit, which I was confident we would do this year, I believe we'll start attracting more talent, better talent. They'll want to stay in Bournemouth. They won't want to move on. So that's our job. In a place like this indoor pitch that we built, it's fantastic.
Was that always your plan, to put things in place that enabled the club to grow organically, but challenge those teams eventually at the top of the table?
Absolutely. You know, we want to play in Europe. Do we get to the top 4, top 5? Complicated, difficult for Bournemouth. But with a new stadium and these facilities, we can keep on doing better every year. Just improve a bit, improve a bit. We have a really good team, and the team is motivated.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Terry, thank you. Well, let's take you back to the breaking news this evening. A man reported to have set himself on fire outside the New York court building where Donald Trump's fraud trial is taking place. We are expecting the police department there to be holding a news conference in the next few minutes. As you can see, the podium being arranged, the microphones being attached. Clearly an awful lot of interest, not just, of course, because an individual has self-immolated, but because Donald Trump will be heading back into court a little bit later on today. Time for a look at the weather. Finally, we're heading into a drier and more settled spell of weather. However, we are likely to be chasing the cloud around, so can't completely rule out the rain. Earlier heavy showers will tend to fizzle out as the brisk winds ease this evening, but the odd one may linger across parts of England. A mostly dry and largely clear night is set to follow. It will, however, turn cold under clear skies and lighter winds, with a patchy frost likely in sheltered spots. Well, after a chilly start, Saturday looking to be mostly dry with spells of spring sunshine and light winds. It will feel pleasant in the sunshine, but a little cooler near the coasts where sea breezes will develop. Cloud will thicken in the far northwest later, bringing spots of rain. Outbreaks of light rain will affect the far north of Scotland through the afternoon, but most other places looking to stay dry. What about the tail end of the weekend? Sunday, well, it's looking to be cloudy, I'm afraid, with some patchy rain, mainly in the northeast. Further west, Ireland and western parts of the UK will be mainly dry and sunny. But let's remind you of the scenes in New York, where we are expecting a news conference from the NYPD in the next few moments. Donald Trump's trial taking place in the building a little bit away from that press conference there. Do stay with us. Coming up in the next hour, we will have much more on the unfolding situation in the Middle East. It is Friday, the 19th of April. Welcome to Friday Night with me, Niall Paterson. This is the show where we take all the news, the good bits and the bad, and dissect them for your entertainment. Tonight, we're going to be speaking to our panel here in the studio, reviewing the week and looking ahead to the weekend. But first, the headlines this hour. Israel strikes back against Iran 5 days after Tehran launched its massive missile and drone attack. Much of the rest of the world, including G7 foreign ministers, is now calling for calm. We report from Lebanon, where one of Iran's proxies, Hezbollah, continues to teeter on the brink of all-out war with Israel. A man sets himself on fire outside the New York courthouse where Donald Trump's hush money trial is taking place. Nicola Sturgeon speaks out for the first time since her husband, Peter Murrell, was charged with embezzlement.
It's incredibly difficult, but that's not the main issue here. So I can't say any more. I'm not going to say any more.
And millions in India cast their vote in the world's biggest election. Coming up, I'm going to be joined by our news reviewers, Ed Patrick and Katie Puckrik, like coiled springs there. They're with us until 9 o'clock, giving us their take on the week's news and the stories that are continuing to gain momentum as we head into the weekend. So what are we going to be discussing? Well, do you remember this Prime Minister? It has been a bad week for, Liz Truss's efforts to plug her new book. We'll also be discussing why it's been a good week for the Duchess of Sussex, after her jars of jam became a global internet sensation. And we're discussing why, despite defeat today, it has been a return to top form for Emma Raducanu. Great to have your company. We're here until 9 o'clock. Hold on tight. It's Friday night. Evening all. We were waiting for an Israeli response to last weekend's extensive, if mostly ineffective, aerial attack from Iran. Well, in the early hours of this morning, it appears that response arrived. The government and military in Israel are declining to confirm or deny that they even carried out a strike. And with the Iranians downplaying the incident, it is hard to know exactly what damage was caused. For their part, Iranian state media says air defense systems were fired in several provinces with reports of explosions, yet so far, no casualties or damage have been confirmed. Our first report this hour from our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle.
After 5 days considering its next move, Israel launched an attack on Iran in the early hours of Friday morning. The target was an airbase near the central city of Isfahan. By first light, the skies were calm again. This was filmed at the nearby Isfahan nuclear facility. Not itself a target, but by hitting close by, Israel had made a point. By breakfast time, Iranian state media was reporting that a few small drones had been shot down.
Nothing has happened. Everything is back to normal.
The sound heard early in the morning today in Isfahan was not an explosion. It was our powerful air defense firing at a suspicious object.
Social media in Iran mocked Israel's attack, another indication that the government was starting to play it down. Iran's president gave an address on television later in the morning and only had this to say on recent tensions with Israel.
Striking Israel was necessary, obligatory, unifying, and a source of pride and power for our great country.
There has been no official comment from the Israeli government, although the far-right National Security Minister Ben Gvir put out this tweet describing the strikes as feeble. Israel's allies, who this week had been urging restraint, were noticeably coy today.
I'm not going to speak to that, except to say that the United States has not been involved in any offensive operations.
Calm heads should prevail. Any significant escalation in the region is not what anyone needs. It wouldn't be in anyone's interests.
There have been no reports of casualties from the Israeli attack, and Iran state TV hasn't shown any video of damage caused. Benjamin Netanyahu would have been given a menu of options for a response against Iran by the IDF. On the more provocative end of the scale would have been a strike against Iran's nuclear facilities. Lower down, an attack on pro-Iranian militia in Syria, for example. In one ear, he would have had the extreme right-wing elements of his coalition demanding that Israel take out a strong response. In the other ear, the US president and other Western allies telling him to take the win and walk away. In the end, he sided with neither and chose something in the middle, a limited response, which Iran appears to be brushing off. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Jerusalem.
Well, the overnight strikes in Iran will have done little to calm the tinderbox conditions throughout the Middle East. Attacks along Israel's border with Lebanon between Israeli forces and Hezbollah have increased in recent days, and tens of thousands of people have been displaced from their homes, fearing for their safety. Our special correspondent Alex Crawford reports from the Lebanese capital, Beirut.
The Iranian influence looms large in Lebanon, and Hezbollah is the strongest and most powerful of Iran's proxies. This fighter's funeral was a chance to show not just the Hezbollah strength in numbers, but the loyalty it can call on against the common enemies. And they start this devoted allegiance very young.
Those of us in Lebanon and everyone who is part of the axis of the resistance everywhere, we're not going to surrender, and no one can frighten us or any partner in this axis.
And that is the real risk, and the message from Hezbollah and Iran. Hit us and you hit us all. And the axis covers Yemen, Iraq and Syria, as well as Lebanon's powerful militia.
It's not really known how strong Hezbollah is in terms of numbers of fighters. Some say it could be as many as 150,000 fighters. Impossible to tell. All we can tell is that there are a lot of them, and they are growing stronger.
Tensions on the southern border have soared over the past week, with fears that any direct Israeli attack on Iran would tip Lebanon and the region into all-out war. But in the first Hezbollah response, the group's political wing scoffed at the reports.
If there was an attack against Iran, I've never heard of such a thing.
Right. You don't think there was an attack?
I heard it in the news, actually.
So you don't think there has been an attack? That's the Iranian Hezbollah view?
My understanding is that the Israelis, up till now, they want to save their face, but so far, if this is... Do you believe this is retaliation?
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave Alex Crawford's report there. You can pick that up on the website because a press conference is taking place in New York at the moment following a man setting himself on fire outside the courthouse where Donald Trump is facing trial. Let's have a listen.
And he'll talk to you about the investigation of the incident today. So with that, I'll bring up the Chief of Department, Jeffrey Madry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Shepard. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to try and talk loud so you can all hear me. But at 1:30 this afternoon, right here in Collect Pond Park, which is directly opposite of a New York County Criminal Court at 100 Center Street, where the trial of former President Trump is currently taking place, we observe a male walk into the park. He walks into the center of the park. When he's in the park, he starts shuffling around his clothes. He opens up a book bag. From the book bag, he takes numerous pieces of papers, pamphlets out. He throws the pamphlets throughout the park, and then he pulls out a canister and pours some kind of liquid on himself, a liquid we believe is an accelerant, and he lights himself on fire. The male, he takes a couple of steps while he's on fire, and then eventually falls onto a police barrier and falls down to the ground. He's on fire. Another area in the park where some of the accelerant spilt is also on fire. Civilians, court officers, members of the police department, they run into the park. They make efforts to put him out. They use their coats, they use fire extinguishers. Eventually, FDNY responds. We're able to put the male, extinguish the fire, and from that point, we remove him to a Cornell burn unit where right now he's there in a critical condition. At this moment, I'll let our fire commissioner talk about the condition of the male and the condition of people who also helped and who are witnesses over there. Commissioner?
Thank you. As the chief mentioned, the
Victim is in critical condition but is alive and intubated at Cornell Burn Center at this time. There were three NYPD officers and one court officer, so 4 officers who had minor injuries from their exposure to the fire. They are all fine, they are stable, and they are green tags, which is minor at this time. We were on scene, as the chief mentioned. EMS did treat and transport the patient, and we do have our fire marshals here helping with the investigation at this time.
Good afternoon, everyone. So the male that's involved in this incident, his name is going to be Maxwell Azzarillo. Right, he's a male. He's born in 1987. His driver's license indicates that he's from St. Augustine, Florida. What we know from speaking to other witnesses and family members is that he arrived in New York sometime earlier in the week. We have his car being in St. Augustine, Florida on the 13th. So anywhere between the 13th and today, he arrived. We spoke to family members today. They were unaware that he was even in New York. As the fire commissioner stated, he's at Cornell Burn Center right now in likely condition. So the accelerant that was used, it appears to be some kind of alcohol-based substance that's used for cleaning. And that's all we have right now.
Carlos, why don't we go right down the line, left to right, and just we'll decide who's going to take what.
I wanted to ask about security. Obviously, there's about NYPD officers. Are you going to be putting more officers? Is there any change to the strategy of what the protocol was before?
Listen, Mark, after every incident, we have an after action, and we'll talk about if we're going to add officers or not. But just so you know, we had a lot of officers in the area. It is open to the public to still walk through the park, and so there was no security breach here at all.
Aaron Paterson. Thanks, Chief. Any evidence of a political motivation here? Do the pamphlets give you any clues as to why this occurred?
The pamphlets seem to be propaganda-based, almost like a conspiracy theory type of pamphlet. Some information in regards to Ponzi schemes and the fact that some of our local educational institutes are fronts for the mob. So a little bit of a conspiracy theory going on here.
Rocco. Chief, any indication if he was here in the park earlier in the week at all?
No, we're going to go through all August video, but what we've seen so far today, it appears that he walked from Leonard Street, he entered the park, walked into the middle of the park, and committed the act.
Dollar Miles.
Chief, do you, in speaking to the family, did they give you any other insight into his mental state? Perhaps
Very preliminary in dealing with the family so far. We just made notification to them that the incident had taken place.
Right back there.
How concerned are you that somebody was able to get this far in, light themselves on fire? Obviously, you said they're in critical condition right now, but how concerning is that with all of these law enforcement officials around?
Yeah. Thank you. We're very concerned. Of course, we're going to review our security protocols. This gentleman did not breach the security protocols. The park was open to the public. But of course, we're going to look at everything, and with the magnitude of what's going on around right here, we'll reassess our security with our federal partners.
How does that change things moving forward?
Like I said, we're going to go back to the command. We'll talk to our federal partners, and we'll make decisions. If we need to tighten up security, maybe we'll shut down the park. This is something that we'll determine once we talk with all our partners, with the court officers, to make sure that with everything going on, the gravity of the event going on right now, we make sure we'll have ample security.
All right, Anthony DiLorenzo. So from the video and from eyewitnesses, it took a few minutes for police officers to get there, to get their hands on fire extinguishers. Was there no FDNY presence already here because of the obvious person inside the courtroom? And is that something that maybe the FDNY wants to revisit in case there is some sort of another emergency like this where EMS or fire would have to respond immediately? Because it took police officers to use fire extinguishers to get them out.
So Anthony, I'll give a piece of that to the fire commissioner, but obviously we're working in partnership with courts, FDNY, all of the city agencies that need to be over here are here. But you got to also remember the park's open to the public. So there was no reason for anybody to already have a fire extinguisher on standby. Nobody knew that this guy was about to light himself on fire. So 2 minutes is a pretty quick response time to be able to get to a vehicle, get a fire extinguisher, run around, get into the park, and start trying to extinguish this fire. All right. But as far as FDNY resources, I'll let Commissioner Kavanaugh just talk about what she may want to do.
Yeah, as they mentioned, obviously we'll work with NYPD to review what happened, and if additional resources are necessary, we will place them here. But typically for any kind of major security event, which this is, we have additional EMS resources on scene. Fire only sometimes. There usually is not a reason for that, as you typically would not have next to a public park, but we will work with NYP to review that. I would have to confirm what time they responded. We'll get back to you, but we do typically, in any kind of high security event, have more EMS resources on scene because there could be patients for any reason.
All right, we're going to do 2 or 3 more. Right here.
Given the high-profile nature of what's happening across the street, we haven't seen any ambulances just on standby outside of court as we know the criminal defendants, 80, give or take. Do you think that this is something that could happen here in place?
Not everything that you see right here is part of the plan. There's a large security plan for this, and trust me, when we had our meetings before this took place, we met with FDNY, EMS, we met with our court partners, we met with Secret Service, so I'm not quite sure what else you're looking for.
Well, an ambulance, like, on standby, like your courthouse.
Yeah, EMS and FDNY are in the area doing this trial as well. And they're totally aware of what's going on, and our response time today was pretty quick.
Matt, 10-10.
Do we know if the man said anything before, during the incident?
Joe, you want to talk about it?
As of right now, what we're showing is that he just walked directly into the park and began to throw the pamphlets in the air and then lit himself on fire. That could come out during our investigation. We have a lot of witnesses here. A lot of people are coming forward. We hope if more people come forward, we can put a little more information together. But as of right now, we don't have that he was making any statements.
Tim McNichols, CBS.
Yeah, we're looking through his social media and what he did online prior, and it appears that he did post something in regards to this event prior to the incident.
Dan Rivley.
That was going to be my question, but to go off that on the internet posting for something like this trial, when you're gathering intelligence, social media is something you do look at, and obviously I think one of the things we're looking at is the Substack post saying, I'm the man, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm the man who set himself on fire outside of the Trump.
Yeah, all of his social media is going to be scrubbed. Obviously, we didn't know him prior to this incident. I can talk about the Detective Bureau. We didn't know him prior to this incident, but going back now, part of the investigation, all his social media, any associates, we'll be looking at all of that.
Right here.
Is there any connection between this guy lighting himself on fire and the Trump trial?
At this point, like I said, very preliminary. We don't have that.
We're just cutting away from that because as trailed, well, you might have missed it there. That was Donald Trump heading into the courtroom where, of course, the fraud trial is about to begin in earnest after jury selection has come to a conclusion. Let's bring in our US correspondent, James Matthews, at this point. He was listening into that news conference, James, held, I think, jointly with representatives from New York Police Department, Fire Department, and potentially, I think, the FBI as well. James, run us through what we learned there, because I have to say, compared to other news conferences that we get at moments like this, I thought there was an awful lot of information there.
There was. It's the way they tend to do it in New York, actually, Neil. And yeah, we got details. We got a name. This individual is Max Azzarello. He was born in '87, which would put him mid to late 30s, from St. Augustine in Florida, had headed to New York without telling his family. They weren't aware that he was in New York. Went into this park, which is across the road from that court building where Donald Trump is on trial. It's an area, they call it the protest square. It's where protesters for and against Donald Trump are typically located. He went into the park and had pamphlets which he threw in the air and then doused himself with a liquid and set himself on fire. The fire was put out in the following minutes by police officers and security officers who were in the vicinity using a fire extinguisher. The police there were asked about their investigations. They say they're looking through social media. They don't have it at this stage that he made any statements just immediately prior to setting himself alight. They are reviewing security in that park. assessing whether or not they might want to close it down. It's a very busy corner of downtown Manhattan. There are hundreds of members of the media, tight security, roads blocked off for Donald Trump's arrival and exit. So that's an overspill, and it is well occupied with people with an interest, protesters for and against, tourists, New Yorkers going about their daily business. So that will be a big call as to what they do with that particular area. But clearly it is a concern, given the nature of what is taking place there, given the fact that Donald Trump is in the vicinity, and that prominent people, prominent members of the media, contributors who, from the political strata in New York, they come and go in that particular vicinity. Police will be looking at that. Donald Trump has just returned, of course, to that courtroom number 5310 on the 15th floor of the court building. Didn't say anything, raised his fist in typical Donald Trump fashion. There will be an afternoon session. There is certainly one scheduled, Neil. There is due to be what's called a Sandoval hearing. That's all about what Donald Trump can be asked and what evidence can be raised should he decide to testify. He said that he will testify in that case, but if he does, the prosecution want to question him about previous cases. Business fraud, the sex assault civil case against E. Jean Carroll. The defense are saying, look, you take the stand and we'll raise these issues, and the judge is deciding whether or not they can raise these issues and how many and in what form. So there is business to be conducted in court today. I suppose the judge may take a decision as to how appropriate that would be, given the nature of events outside, very distressing events, clearly.
Very distressing indeed. James, for now, thanks very much indeed. Just to conclude, that press conference taking place in New York has now concluded. We will obviously go back, just make sure no fresh detail emerged from that bit that we didn't see whilst taking a look at Donald Trump. Do stay with us. Coming up, we'll have much, much more from Ed and Katie, our news reviewers, including this. Taylor Swift topping the chart just hours after releasing a surprise double album.
Well, obviously, first of all, I'd like to address that the government just made an announcement, and this announcement is eliminating golden visa for those who want to purchase a property for 500,000 euros or more. But the golden visa remains active till now, because there should be a parliament process for the amendment that they're going to do to the act. There may be changes or there may be not. So for now, it's still active. We don't know. This is creating a lot of disinformation, because we don't know what's going to happen to the current holders of golden visas, which is actually a residency permit. We are not aware what's going to happen when the residency permit expires and they're about to do a renewal. And there is also uncertainty for those who are currently processing their golden visa. Well, in my professional opinion, they should continue, okay? Because until we don't learn anything more about this amendment to the law, as I said, it's still active. And we are currently processing golden visa. And the golden visa department that's located in Madrid, which is called Unidad de Grandes Empresas, is still processing them, okay? And that will be my advice to continue. Let's say that in a few days, we learn that those that are currently holders or they are processing it, those will be processed, but once they expire. In the meantime, if you're currently a holder of a golden visa, this residency permit, you can actually swap it, okay, to another residency permit while you are here in Spain.
Now, despite confirming her new music's release date at the Grammys, Taylor Swift has proven she can still shock her fans. In the early hours, she announced the Tortured Poets Department was in fact a double album with around twice the number of tracks as expected. Our correspondent Emma Birchley has been having a listen.
It was an unexpected early hours update that sent Swifties into a spin. And for a fortnight there we were. News that the 11th studio album from global megastar Taylor Swift would come with 15 extra tracks. It followed the release of a short video teasing what was to come. Then at 7 a.m. UK time came this on social media. It's a 2 a.m. surprise. The Tortured Poets Department is a secret double album. The result said the star of wanting to share the tortured poetry she'd written over the past 2 years. This period of the author's life is now over, she wrote in another post. The chapter closed and boarded up. There is nothing to avenge, no scores to settle once wounds have healed. It's a breakup album that's got fans speculating about exactly who she's singing about. Two British exes are certainly contenders, actor Joe Alwyn, as well as Matty Healy, singer from the 1975. But there's also a song thought to refer to her current love, American footballer Travis Kelce. Jodie Ward works at Banquet Records in Kingston and bought her copy as soon as she got in.
Your flatmates are all fans as well?
Oh, big fans, yeah. They're very excited to get their hands on this as well as me.
Do you think you'll all have your own version?
Yeah,
your own
definitely.
One?
Yeah, we even though we normally use the one record player in our house, we all have our own.
John Tolley took delivery of 250 copies first thing.
We're selling more and more records, and vinyl is at a 25-year high, and whilst there's hundreds and thousands of artists putting out records on vinyl, no one is selling as many records as Taylor Swift.
The vinyl version doesn't include the full list of bonus tracks, but it'll still set you back £42.
But the billionaire isn't just bolstering her own bank balance. The 6-day Los Angeles leg of her Eras tour is said to have boosted the local economy by the equivalent of £250 million.
It's going to be called the Eras Tour. See you there.
Her current show has sold out stadiums across the world and is projected to become the highest-grossing tour in history. This latest album is just more fuel for fans' adulation, while keeping them guessing. Emma Birchley, Sky News.
And joining us on Friday night, Taylor Swift superfan Ali Romero. Ali, lovely to have you here.
Nice to meet you.
I mean, first things first, the Tortured Poets Department. What do we make of it? Clearly, you don't think it's any good.
No, I love it. I've been a fan of her for 15 years, so I've seen almost all of her album releases, and this is her 11th main album in addition to the re-recordings, and I'm such a fan. Every time she puts out an album, I'm just blown away by her craft, her songwriting, the production, performance, everything.
And clearly, yes. You might have met her at some point, because I'm thinking that squiggle might well be her signature.
This is her signature. I haven't met her, unfortunately. We have, she followed me on Tumblr back in the day and liked a few of my posts. But she does a ton of signed things for fans, and she sells signed records, yeah.
Let's talk about the fact that everyone was going, oh, we're getting an album, well, and obviously there was an awful lot of excitement. And then she delivers the double whammy, double album. I mean, what was your reaction when you heard about that?
That was crazy. I had just woken up because it was 2 a.m. America time, so it was about 6:30 here. And a lot of people had thought she might do a double album. She's hinted at it before. There were a lot of twos in the themes for the promo this cycle. But I was just so stunned. It was already incredible, 16 songs. A lot of artists do much smaller albums. But to do another 15 songs on top of that for 31 songs was incredible. Because,
again, I have been kind of introduced to the Taylor Swift phenomenon over the past kind of year and a half. And what has impressed me, I will admit, it's not necessarily entirely my music, but what has impressed me is the commitment that she has. I mean, have you seen her live before?
Yes, many times.
She does quite a long set, yes. Doesn't she? More than a couple of hours.
Over 3 hours.
Over 3 hours?
Yes, and she barely takes any breaks. It's just a quick costume change and she's back out.
I mean, as my producer is pointing out, rivals Bruce Springsteen, also rivals me. I should say I do a 3-hour show as well and don't get paid anywhere near the same. But why do you think that her career, and admittedly, she started at a very early age, but you know, you've been following her for 15 years. How on earth has she lasted this long?
Yeah, I think she's truly a once-in-a-generation, once-in-a-lifetime talent, and I think the reason she is so unique and she's lasted this long is because she's constantly reinventing herself, but also staying the same to her core fans. I know people personally who have been fans even longer than I have, and she's met them over the years. She remembers them. She reaches out to them. I know people who she's invited them to her house or donated money to them during COVID.
Wow.
She's just, I think her connection to her fans is the #1 reason why she's lasted this long, but #2 is definitely just her incredible talents.
What about her connection to her ex-boyfriends? Because they seem to crop up an awful lot in her songwriting.
They do, but I think the star power of her lets her write songs about her experiences, but that you can also apply to your own experiences. Obviously, she's written about so many things: love, family, loss, just her growth as an artist. And there's so many songs that I relate to my own experience, even though I haven't had the exact same experience.
Well, let's bring in Katie and Ed at this point. We've already been discussing, you know, the level of fandom that there is in the studio right now for Taylor Swift. But I suppose, as we were just saying there, you cannot not admire someone who has had a career like this, even if you are not the world's biggest fan of their music?
Well, I think Taylor is extraordinary. I mean, she's absolutely the emperor of her own destiny. She's just creating her whole world and inviting the audience into it. But what I wonder about, and you're the perfect person to answer this for me, when she writes about her personal life over and over and over again, when I listened to this new album, I started to feel a little uncomfortable, like she was picking on these various men. Like, she's in this huge position of power. She has this huge platform that she's created for herself. And
Hollywood star Joe Alwyn, I think, can look after himself.
Well, but what I'm saying is she's never the schmuck.
No, true.
It seems like they're always the pranny, they're always the plonker, and she's the one that's been a bit aggrieved. Am I wrong about that? Does she also criticize herself in her lyrics?
She does, definitely. Over the last 15 years, she's apologized in many songs. Even her big song, Antihero, a year or two ago, she was saying, "It's me, I'm the problem." Even in Tortured Poets, there's multiple songs where she's saying that her own flaws, her own dealing with her own issues is often an issue in relationships. I think it goes back and forth, and I think, like any artist, she has the right to talk about her experience, just like she's dated songwriters. They've talked about their experience too.
Sure.
So I think, obviously, I think women get a bad shake of going through their experience, but I think she's written about so much, and she is just being honest with her life.
I mean, Ed, where are you on this Swift spectrum?
I'm very excited for people who are massive Taylor Swift fans. I remember when I got a first double album, it was Smashing Pumpkins and The Melancholy and Infinite Sadness. It was a double album. I was so excited. And that can't really be lost if you think about it, because she's such a global superstar. She could sell albums again and again, and she could have just sold this separately as another album. So it really did seem like a gift to the fans. Yet, despite that, she's so massive, and she has a huge impact, not just on her fans, but also economically as well. I mean, I think it was at one of her last tours, they reckon it was around about 5 billion contributed to world economy, which is amazing. Swiftonomics, I think you can study it. I think we should get Taylor Swift as Prime Minister, OK?
Well, it's Swift and Beyonce as well. And both of them, they always cause a little bump in the local economies wherever they're playing.
Yeah, she's done a ton for small artists, for small record stores. She's always saying to support them. Even back in 2015, she was the one that got streaming services to pay smaller artists for their streams as well. So she's always doing things like that.
And then, you know, had the blinding idea of re-recording everything and selling it for a second time, which, you know, she's absolutely entitled to do. Ali, right, we've got to ask at this point, because, as you say, 15 years, what, 11 albums, is it now?
This is her 11th original album, and then a few re-recordings, etc.
What's your favourite tune by Taylor? The one that is constantly going to get either up on the dance floor or crying your eyes out.
I would say a really old one, her song 15. It's on the Fearless record. It was one of the first Taylor songs I heard. I'm 25 now. I heard it when I was probably 12 or 13. Actually, probably I was younger than that. I mentioned it in the speech I gave at my high school graduation. It's really just meant a lot to me, and it's kind of just about that you're going to do better things in your life than dealing with what you're dealing with in high school, and I think that's why her music is so amazing. Like, whether she's 18 or 34, she's writing about things that people at any age can relate to.
Well, for me, it's Paper Rings from her seminal 2019 Lover album. Much underrated, much underrated. Ali, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for coming in, and enjoy the concert when it happens later this year. Stick with us. Coming up next, why it has been a bad week for Liz Truss, despite all her efforts to make it again. Welcome back to Friday Night. We are continuing our review of the week's news, and of course, it's at this point we ask who's had a good week and who's had a bad one. The weekend is finally here, so who's relieved it's all over and who finished a winner? Still with us, Dr. Ed Patrick and Katie Puckrik. And Ed, we're going to start with you. Tell us why it has been a good week for Ryan Reynolds. I suspect pretty much every week is a good week for Ryan Reynolds.
Absolutely took the words out of my mouth. Is there ever a bad week for Ryan Reynolds? He just seems to win every single week, but particularly this week with Wrexham, who he partners with Rob McElhenney, winning promotion for the successive season again.
Fantastic,
It is a great story. I mean, people do talk about lots of money going into football. It doesn't always work out. I'm a Nottingham Forest fan. We've had a lot of money.
Clearly doesn't always work out.
We are suffering, yeah. So, but what's amazing is the story around it. And like I said, he just seems to win at everything, whether it's business ventures with his gin or anything like that. I now think that we should have Ryan Reynolds take over the NHS, at least for a season. Just give it for a season, because can you imagine, because he gets involved with the advertising, can you imagine if Ryan Reynolds came on the TV and said, you need to get your blood pressure checked? Everyone would do it. So I think we should give Ryan, it's a great story.
And looks good in a set of scrubs as well, I suspect. But that's the thing. See, Ryan Reynolds, he's got all the money in the world, you know, beautiful family, acting in, multi-million-dollar grossing films, and I can't find it in my heart to dislike the guy. There is just something eminently likeable about him. Do you agree, Katie?
Yeah, well, some people just have an innate sense of elegance and grace. You know, you don't get the sense that they're desperately trying to overcompensate for not being loved enough as a child. He just seems to
You're talking about me, sorry.
seems to be a nice man having a nice life and wanting to share it with some other nice people.
Yeah, and Wrexham have done very, very well as a result. But Katie, your good week this week, milk drinkers. Why are they having a great week?
Yay! Well, it turns out that camels are the new cows.
Sorry,
Neil.
wait a minute.
Camels are the new cows. So we're talking about the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia, Kenya. They've been suffering with a lot of drought for the last 3 years. And drought is not great for cows.
No, goodness.
And the people in that part of the world really rely on cows for milk. Milk is their main source of nutrition. And it turns out that cows can only hack a day or two without water, but camels, weeks, couple of weeks, easy. So there's an initiative in the Horn of Africa to replace these cows, which used to be the sign of status and wealth, with camels. And it turns out, guess what? Camel milk is delicious.
That was going to be my question, because clearly it's going to be nutritious and it's going to do well by you, but does it not taste like, kind of old cheese?
It doesn't taste like old cheese. That's goat's milk, which is, goat's milk is tasty in that kind of gamey sort of way, that sort of intimate, on team sort of way. But the cow's milk, apparently, I haven't had it myself, but it is said that it's creamy, a little sweet, and a little salty, and has some very interesting minerals in it.
My stomach has turned. My stomach has turned at the point that you said that it has a slightly salty taste.
A little salty taste. Well, they can't be too hydrated. They have to. So you can imagine that there's a little soupçon of salinity.
I was just going to say, how do you... this is the universal sign for milking.
We're grasping some teats here.
I was going to say, how many teats does a camel have?
Is
it just a single?
You are talking to somebody who's only scanned the headlines. I have to go deep into teat research.
Before we get too far into the teat discussion that has been dropped into my lap, let's talk about Meghan, the Duchess of Montecito, who presumably would be selling camel milk on her website if she got hold of it. Until she does, she's handing out 50 pots of jam to her closest friends. Did you get one, Katie?
No, I didn't make the cut. I'm just here hovering at 51, Meghan. So, don't forget about me.
But we take a look at it. I mean, it looks like a very expensive jar of jam, although the label does appear to be peeling off there.
Wait a minute. What kind of fruit are we talking about?
Strawberry jam, apparently.
Yeah.
And grown by herself. I can just imagine Meghan out there with those knee protectors on, digging the weeds out of the way to...
With some migrant workers, maybe. That's California.
Do you think she's going to succeed with this, Ed, this website? I mean, she's clearly going down the kind of the Gwyneth Paltrow.
I was just going to ask if she's given any to the Conservatives. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happened. Had to be said. It's an interesting venture. I think it will succeed. People like these little things, don't they?
Yeah, they do. But one person that tends to divide opinion, Ed, is your choice for Bad Week. Liz Truss.
Well, I mean, we can start off by talking about the picturesque way she managed to display her new book that is coming out, and I think it really explains everything.
Shall we take a quick look at it? Because I've got to say, it is absolutely prize-winning.
Great to see you. Your thoughts...
Great to see you. And here's my new book. I'll just get it up. Sorry.
There you go.
There we are.
There we are. Liz Truss handling a book like she did the British economy. So,
but isn't it just? It's more than that. Obviously, not being able to know which way is up and which way is down is one thing. But being so brazen as that the first thing out your mouth is, yes, I know you've brought me here to talk about politics, but here's my book.
It was amazing. I mean, it's 10 years to save the West, the title. The only Conservative in the room. I think probably the only person in the room at the time. It's just a bit desperate, and there's other things that have gone. It's not just a Bad Week because of that, but also now the allegations of having, false quotes in there from Rothschild. Turns out that there was a quote in there attributed to it, and that hasn't turned out to be true. Also broken the Radcliffe rule, which isn't a rule where you can't have any characters of Daniel Radcliffe in. It's a rule where you can't talk about certain things. So it seems it's got off to a bit of a rocky start.
Yeah, but she's a rebel, though. Isn't that her brand? Is that she's a maverick and she can do anything and say anything?
I'm not sure if you've been Prime Minister, you can ever describe yourself as a radical or indeed someone who is not part of the global elite. But Katie, let's talk about other members of the global elite. Bad Week for two pretty well-known Nepo babies. I've said that.
Yeah, Nepo babies. So here we have Exhibit A, James McCartney, who's Paul McCartney's son, and Sean Ono Lennon, John and Yoko's son. Now, Sean and James have released a single. The single is called Primrose Hill, and I would characterize it as lackluster.
A little bit. Let's have a listen then.
We laid on Primrose Hill, didn't know it still. You meant what you said. Sultry day, I didn't know what to do.
You know what? Yeah. I'm going to downgrade lackluster to tepid. So the thing is that is odd. It's one thing if you're like the son or daughter of Madonna or a Beatle or something, and you're 17 and you're just trying something out, and you're like, okay, maybe this is my opportunity. But James is 46 years old, so I don't know if this is just something that he recorded when he was 17 and he's hustling it out, or it's a crazy hobby. I don't know. And the thing is, if it was really good, maybe that would be even more disappointing. So maybe maybe it's fun when it's bad.
I mean, that's the thing. You do wonder if you could ever come out from underneath the cloud that is John Lennon being your dad or Paul McCartney being your dad.
It is a bit lo-fi. So lo-fi, it looks like I filmed the music video as well for it. So, in portrait mode. It's like someone forgot to tell me to put it in landscape.
Guys, we are going to have to leave it there. It's been absolutely fascinating having you both in this evening. Really appreciate your time. Ed and Katie, thanks very much indeed. We are going to be taking a short break. Coming up next in the sport, after an injury-hit year, is Emma Raducanu getting back to her very best? Find out how she got on against the world #1 in Stuttgart.
In the early hours of the morning, we were woken up to discover that Israel had attacked Iran. Now, this was in retaliation to Iran's attack on Israel last weekend. All week, Israel has said that it would respond. We've now seen a retaliation, and we are waiting to find out what happens next. We are also waiting to hear from Iranian officials. Join me for a special program at 9 p.m. for all the expert analysis, and our correspondents are right across the region here on Sky News.
I'm Adam Parsons. I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels.
More
more flares going off, a volley of rocks, cobbles have been pulled up out and are being used as missiles to hurl at these police. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. We aim to be the best and most trusted place for news. We have now left Italy and entered France. Nobody's asked to check our identity. Made by people who dare to challenge. Nice to see you again, Mr. Barnier. Why? Meeting you. Fishing does have the potential to stymie an enormous economic deal. What strikes you when you come to this glacier is not just the way in which the environment is changing, but the speed at which those changes are happening.
It's devastating, actually.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back. It is the FA Cup semi-final this weekend, but the build-up, well, it's been overshadowed by the fallout from yesterday's announcement that replays will be scrapped from next season. Teddy is standing by over at Sky Sports News. And Teddy, you're going to have to explain this one a little bit to me, because I have to admit, when I first heard replays, we were getting rid of them, that was a positive thing, that actually, you know, rather than having the competition drag on, you know, you get on with the action. But as one of my pals points out to me, you know, it's not the Liverpools, it's not the Man U's that are going to be losing out here, it's the teams down in the lower divisions.
Yeah, very interesting. Manchester City, one of those teams in the FA Cup semi-finals. Indeed, Pep Guardiola made that point, says it's much better for them. We've seen the bloated Champions League. It's going to get even bigger next season. There's going to be 8 games in the group stage to get things going. We've seen Nations League, international football expanded, the European Championships, the World Cup being expanded. So the elite players, more and more. But for those lower clubs down the tier, this is a 150-year history of replays. We know that from the 4th round, 5th round onwards, they were scrapped 5 years ago, the replays. But below that, more often or not, those lower tier teams in the 2nd tier, 3rd tier, 4th tier, and even non-league get opportunities in the 3rd and 4th round. It can be worth a lot of money. Back in 2015, for example, Cambridge United won a replay going to Old Trafford when they were a League 2, a 4th level team, earned £1 million, which is big money for them at that level. Now, the FA have said that all parties accepted this couldn't continue. So there is conjecture at the moment, because the EFL, which comprises the 2nd, 3rd and 4th tier, Championship, League 1 and League 2, they're saying that it was solely a decision between the Premier League and the FA. The Professional Game Board meeting, they said, to discuss this last year. The FA claimed that it was a non-negotiable. The FA, by the way, saying that there will be more money coming into the pot because more games will be broadcast in the 3rd and 4th round, which does bring money. I know that Cheltenham Town, a League One club close to me, actually made a lot of money when they faced Manchester City in the 3rd round a few years ago. That was just a home game because they were on television and got big revenue from that. That kept them going during lockdown. So there is perhaps a caveat that the FA argue there's going to be money coming into the pot. The Premier League, as part of this, has committed £33 million to grassroots football. But a lot of EFL clubs unhappy. League 2 Tranmere saying it's a complete lack of respect, Neil, which seems to reflect the mood for those clubs in the bottom 72, if you like.
You always suspect at times like this that when money is mentioned, money may very well be the driving force behind this. But we wait to see what is said by the authorities. Teddy, plenty more sport. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Neil. Yep, just a moment, we'll be with you.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active.
Live life with Vitality.
This is a glimpse into the future of AFC Bournemouth, a multi-million-pound training ground that is getting closer to transforming the club completely. Owner and American businessman Bill Foley was visiting from his home in Las Vegas, an opportunity to see his vision becoming reality.
It looks spectacular.
It looks spectacular, but maybe
that's the difference you've got.
Could we have saved a few £1 million?
Maybe, but yeah, it certainly looks incredible. That's for sure.
I mean, women's academy, first team, unbelievable facilities are going to be here. This will be one of the best training facilities in the league. When it's finished, it's going to be unbelievable.
Despite being Bournemouth's owner for less than 18 months, he's been bullish with his predictions about survival and made huge strides off the pitch in an industry that promises fans so much but fails to deliver. So how has he kept his word?
Transparency, be honest, always tell the truth, and always be honest. And I have big ambitions for this team, and I know we can do it because I've done it. I've done it with the Golden Knights, our hockey club.
So you've translated what you did in Vegas to Bournemouth with the same model, the same infrastructure, the same plans?
Same plan, same program. It's expensive. You've got to put a lot of money behind to keep your word, you've got to put a lot of money behind it. But the goal is, now that we've moved up the table a bit, which I was confident we would do this year, I believe we'll start attracting more talent, better talent. They'll want to stay in Bournemouth. They won't want to move on. So that's our job. In a place like this indoor pitch that we built, it's fantastic.
Was that always your plan, to put things in place that enabled the club to grow organically, but challenge those teams eventually at the top of the table?
Absolutely. You know, we want to play in Europe. Do we get to the top 4, top 5? Complicated, difficult for Bournemouth. But with a new stadium and these facilities, we can keep on doing better every year. Just improve a bit. We have a really good team, and the team is motivated in becoming a team as opposed to a group of individuals. If we can keep on doing that as we move on through this season and next season, the season after, we'll be successful.
If someone had said to you all the things that you'd achieve and so on when you invested in Bournemouth, when you bought this great football club, would you have believed that you'd made so much progress in such a short space of time?
Well, I'm running out of time, so I have to make sure I do things quickly and efficiently. I had complete confidence in what we could do. Once I met our management team and some of the football staff, I knew what we could do, and I knew with the right resources behind it and the right attitude, a winning attitude, and a never give up attitude, I knew we'd be okay. I was very confident. Wow, it's gigantic, isn't it?
You're one of a number of Americans that have invested in the Premier League. Is there a reason why you think that there are more American businessmen that are looking at English football as a vehicle to get into the sports industry, to potentially make money, to be a part of something that's a global product? Is there a reason why you think that's the case?
Yeah, well, I mean, football is the greatest sport in the world, and the Premier League.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Ed, thanks very much. Time for the weather. And finally, we are heading into a drier and more settled spell of weather. However, we are still likely to be chasing the cloud around, so we can't completely rule out rain. Earlier, heavy showers will tend to fizzle out as the brisk winds ease this evening. The odd one might just linger over parts of England. A mostly dry and largely clear night will follow, turning cold under clear skies and lighter winds. After a chilly start Saturday, well, it's going to be mostly dry with spells of spring sunshine and light winds. It'll feel pleasant in the sunshine, a little cooler near the coasts where the sea breezes develop. Cloud will thicken in the far northwest later, bringing with it spots of rain. And that's your lot for Friday night with me, Niall Paterson. Coming up in the next hour, a special programme from Israel on the latest reaction to a strike on Iran. Yalda Hakim will be in Jerusalem.